Thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren, and I'm joined today by Kris Morin, a former Fortune 200 strategy executive and Accenture consultant who embarked on a transformative journey from corporate burnout to financial freedom. As the co-founder and head of investor relations at Three Peaks Capital, Kris now leverages his expertise to help professionals nationwide diversify their portfolios and secure robust financial futures. Thanks for joining me, Kris, with a K.
That's right. Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be.
So, our goal for today is to make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a big part of adulting. So, today, Kris, we're going to talk about coming from nothing to financial freedom and a bunch of other things. But first, getting into your bio, can you just dive in a little bit more on your early career journey?
Yeah. So you and I were just talking pre-show, right? That the genesis of my career was really I was a high school science teacher long before going into business. In grad school. So when I was in college, I was a biochemistry undergrad. I was actually on track to be a surgeon. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I was an athletic guy, and I was into the sciences. And a couple of surgeons actually talked me out of it. I won't go down that path, but they talked me out of it. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with myself, right? I kind of always liked tutoring others. People always turned to me in high school and college for extra help. Education felt like a natural fit, aligned with some of the interests that I had. So I was like, I'm going to become a teacher. And fast forward, I come out of grad school, I'm teaching, and I was sort of having this realization that as fulfilling as it can be to work with young children, right? I was largely unfulfilled. And that's because I'd always sort of, I just always wanted, not only, I always wanted to take on larger, bigger challenges. I was very money motivated, I have to admit, right? I was a millennial. We all want to be rich, and we all want to be some CEO someday. I was getting a little bored teaching the same content every single year, right? And so I just felt like, maybe education would be better fit at some other point in my life. And then, I was also feeling the financial pains of being a teacher. I guess I would say the story I tell sometimes, I kind of felt like a sucker. I got the best grades. I went through the best schools. I got a master's degree in education. I come out making a whopping $36,000 a year. And then I was like, this is it. And, my idea of a nice date night out was taking my girlfriend to Friendly's. And if you're from the Northeast, then you know what I'm talking about. But it's basically a step up from fast food. And I just wanted more for myself is really the point there. And so, that really set me off on a journey to go, earn more, get into business, and be more. And, ultimately, I was a well-educated guy. I was very motivated. I was well networked. So I landed a business job. One thing led to another. I ultimately stumbled into a large consulting firm called Accenture. I think a lot of folks are familiar with it.
Mhm.
They ended up sending me to business school, and that's really where the business acumen started to develop. And I realized early on that a lot of the work that I did, as a business professional, as a consultant, aligned very well to my strengths. And so I ended up doing very well very quickly. And they tell you when you first enter Accenture, don't expect a promotion for the first 2 years. I got promoted in the first 6 months. And I was just kind of off to the races. And so by all means, at this point, though, I guess the point of the story is I was making it, right? I was a young 20-something-year-old guy. I'm traveling all over the country, working in the biggest companies in the world. I had more than 3x my income in just a couple of months from when I was a teacher. I was doing great, but I was having this realization, like, holy cow, there's no way I can do this for like the next 30 years, right? I can't, I'm on a plane 50 weeks out of the year. Um, Friends and family are pretty much non-existent. It was all about the career, which I thought I wanted, the big six-figure salary and the leadership role. But I thought there's no way I can do this forever. I'm certainly not going to be able to save my way to retirement. And so I felt stuck
Mhm.
all over again, just a new challenge. Now hold on to that thought for 1 second, because this is right around like 2008, 2009, the Great Recession hits, right? And I watch people not only lose their jobs, but some people who could have been weeks away from retirement having half their net worth ripped out from underneath them, forcing them to stay in the workforce, right,
Yeah.
for another decade.
Yeah.
Then you have folks who are probably in retirement, had to go back into the workforce. So now here I am, like with these two thoughts, like I can't do this forever, and I'll be damned if I do. And then somehow some event that I have no control over takes it all away from me, right? So I knew there had to be a better way. And so I started doing research. What do the ultra wealthy do? I mean, they have a lot more wealth to protect and preserve than me, and certainly they're trying to grow it. What do they do? Lo and behold, real estate comes up as a loud and resounding theme, right? And so I
Yeah.
knew I had to figure this real estate thing out. And that was really the impetus for that journey. And what started off as a side hustle initially to build extra streams of income, to just build in that security, because I'd always intended to continue working. I wasn't one of those people that was thinking, I'm gonna just quit my job and be a real estate investor. I'm not one of those people that thinks about taking income streams away. I want to add them, right? And so, fast forward, I'm gonna, skip. We can dive in at any point, but I continue to leverage my strengths and my business acumen to really develop a very successful real estate investment company over a 10-year period. And what I realized was, the expertise and that I was building in economics, the business acumen, the operations acumen that I was building in business, and then ultimately I led strategy for a $4 billion company. Those things combined really well with real estate investing. I made really intelligent, data-driven decisions economically on how and where and when to invest and to optimize returns and protect, uh, de-risk the investments of that folks were ultimately making with me. Because at this point, folks all around me, from doctors and lawyers to business professionals to everyday people, they were kind of finding out about what I was doing and saying, can I invest with you? Right. I've always wanted to like get into real estate, but I don't have the time to figure it all out. And I never want to do what you do, but can I invest with you? Um, and that's when I realized I was really onto something here. And so, long story short, that led to the birth of this company, Three Peaks Capital, which is essentially now a private equity firm that allows individuals who aspire to enjoy the powerful benefits of real estate, but don't have the time or the desire to deal with tenants and toilets, as they say, right? But they can invest with us, through us, basically what's called a limited partnership. And we do all the heavy lifting. We find the deals, the right deals, we analyze them, we buy them, we manage them professionally, and we return a large portion of the profits to our investors. And so it's a great way for other folks to join, to come invest alongside of us. And and again, going back, it was just meant to be a side hustle, turned into a passion, and now it's my full-time job.
You are speaking to me on a ton of different levels here, starting with the millennial thing. And I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but little sidetrack, I wanted to be a lawyer. And my dad was like, "Cool, I know a couple of lawyers. I'm going to have you talk to them." And they straight talked me out of becoming a lawyer, kind of like what happened with you with being talked out of becoming a doctor. And it's only hit me the last year since I left my 9 to 5 where I'm like, I wonder if I missed my thing, you know? As much as I love real estate and personal finance, man, I really love the law too. But anyways, that's a side note. Maybe I'll go back to that later. But um, so this idea of the Great Recession too, and I think this is something we're only starting to really realize now, even though it was a relatively long time ago at this point. I mean, where are we at? 2008, 2009, like 15 years ago. That's sounds like a long time ago, but that collectively scarred millions of people. And not just the people that you're talking about that were about to retire at the time, but the people like us who were, I mean, I turned 19 the week Lehman crashed, right? That whole generation has this idea in their head of this can be taken away at any moment. So there's no way to really know how that's affecting all of us. But I think just we should all be aware of what's gone on in our lives and what's gone on more broadly and how that's affecting us. And I'm sure we're going to see some more effects of COVID as well. So you became a teacher. So I was a manager at Toys R Us my first year out of school, and I made 28,000. I didn't have to get a master's degree for that. So that 36,000, it hurts. Now, if you're out there making $36,000, and if you're a teacher, just so you know, according to Millionaire Next Door, you can still do very well. You have high net worth. You guys are smart people, you're organized people, and you guys are able to understand personal finance and save your way and invest your way to retirement and have a very good retirement. All of that is true. But if you're super motivated like myself or like you are, Kris, 36,000 is just it's not going to do it. And I hear what you're saying about teaching the same thing every year. I think teaching has to be its own calling, right? Like it has to be what you want to do and mold young minds. And you have to find, I assume, find other things, other challenges outside of just the content that you're teaching in the curriculum. So I can understand where you're coming from there. Is there anything about teaching or the stuff that you learned in education that is a kind of a through line to what you're doing now with your investments?
I guess one thing that comes to mind um, is I guess you sort of get used to distilling a message. Yeah, I think there's a real craft in that and how to articulate something crisply and simply so that really anybody can understand it. I think it makes you a more effective communicator. And so I always kind of joke with others when I talk about it. I say, if you're trying to talk about real estate investments, even if it's to like a really sophisticated business owner with a big ego who thinks he's super smart, the second you walk in and you start throwing out all the acronyms and the lingo, right, you're going to lose them and they're ultimately not going to invest with you. So you got to dumb it down to like an eighth grade level so that everything you say, the light bulb's going off, and he's like, I get it. That feels familiar. That doesn't feel foreign or risky, right? Because ultimately
Right.
we want these people to invest with us. And so yeah, I think, just remembering that everybody's human and we all learn differently and understanding how to tap into that, whether it's, verbal, visual combination thereof. I think there are probably a number of things that have allowed me to become a more effective communicator and really, like say, distill really complex concepts to make people understand them quickly and get comfortable with them.
And this idea of stacking skills along your career, a friend of mine, he started out as a writer and then he went into marketing and now he's in sales. And he's a good example of someone I feel like picked up skills all along the way. And so, for anybody who's listening that is thinking, man, I am, for example, like Kris, I'm a teacher, I'm teaching the same thing every year. Bio one or not even just science, whatever it is that you're teaching over and over and over, know that you are still learning other things as well. And you're going to bring those through to your career in the future. And I did some of that. I'm sure there's some things that I bring even from my 1 year as a front end department supervisor at Toys R Us with me. And certainly I bring everything I learned in sales when I was in sales for 9 years, selling to the bottom half of the Fortune 1000. So I wanted to ask, and I think I know the answer to this question from your opening there. Did you learn anything personal finance wise, like from your parents, or was it mostly like you said when you got into the business school, you start learning about business finance, and then you kind of are translating it yourself into personal finance? How did that go?
Exactly as you outlined it. So I grew up in a small farm town in Connecticut. I didn't come from money. Nobody in my family had an entrepreneurial bone in their body. They were very much, the boomer generation. Like if you went to college, right? Not all of them did, but you settled down with an employer. You were extremely loyal. You worked there forever, right until the end, right? And it's just that kind of mindset. And I think
Yeah.
yeah, so I wasn't really ever exposed to this sort of mindset or behavioral traits of taking risks. But somehow I was born with it, and somehow it just nurtured and grew within me. And I think a lot of that had to do with my father teaching me at a young age, instilling in me that you can do whatever you want to do, you can be whatever you want to become. I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's some limitations there, right? But I set really lofty goals at a young age. And when you're young, it starts with like sports, right? And so when you're a young male in particular, like you want to be able to jump high. It's like a masculine thing to do, right? And just giving you a real story here. And so I said I want to be able to dunk a basketball. And I was like this short white kid and I couldn't do it, but I set out, I built it. I surrounded myself with experts, right? Trainers at the time. My dad had got me in touch with some college coaches for track and field. And, I ended up putting together a training plan and I ended up becoming, not only could I dunk a basketball, I became a state champion 6 times over. I became a regional and national champion and I was nationally ranked and I got scholarships to multiple schools all over the country for some of the biggest track programs, right? So like, it was like, early on in my life, I was like, I could set these goals, I can do these things. So I think that played a lot into it. But but yeah, aside from that, no real education in finance or anything. I think there was just a drive to always be a leader and achieve these really lofty goals. And like I said, I was a millennial, so I thought being rich was like the coolest thing that you had to do. But now I know, of course, money's not everything. So
If people are starting now, maybe just realizing how important personal finance is or are learning about investing in general because they maybe did not have that environment growing up, can they do what you did? Can they get where you are?
yeah, I think anybody can. I think first of all, for me, the formula for success has always been surround yourself with people who know the things that you don't, right? Um, success leaves clues, as they say. The blueprint's out there. All you have to do is follow it. So, if real estate investing is your thing, there's real estate investing associations in pretty much every state in America. You can join it and start learning tomorrow about the different strategies that exist and the types of actions that you can take. And you might say, oh, I'm not comfortable talking to other people or trying to raise money to do deals. That's okay. Take inventory of what you're good at, right? And then go find people to partner with. And that's kind of another point that I would build up to. And that's true in any business. So whatever you think you're going to do as an endeavor, don't try to do it alone. Ultimately leveraging other people for their skills, right? You're likely to stick with it longer. I think a lot of people burn out and quit, whether it's real estate or not, because they end up spending a lot of time on the things that maybe align to their weaknesses, the stuff that just doesn't get them juiced up, and they're like, I'm just not enjoying this, right? And so I think, yes, I think the short answer is anybody can do what I do. I think what's really unique about what I do is there's a fundamental question that people have to ask themselves, and that is, do I want to be active in real estate investing or do I want to be passive? And so what I mean by that is, do you want to be the landlord or the flipper, the guy who's dealing with all the headaches? Any business, there's going to be lots of headaches and lots of risks. Don't get me wrong. There are some deals that, um, that cause you some strain and some pain. Or do you want to be passive? Do you want to find an expert like us who will do all that heavy lifting and take on all the liability and the risk, but you can still enjoy the same benefits and sometimes make the same amount of money anyways, and then you do nothing. You just continue to do your work and your hobbies all day, every day, and right. So there's that opportunity. I think that's one of the unique things about real estate investing. But yeah, anybody can do it, and I would really challenge folks to stop listening to that little devil sitting on their shoulder, trying to find all the excuses for why they can't. I think ultimately there's nothing stopping anybody from success except for their own mindset, right? That's always the only hurdle.
I heard you on another podcast talking about a board of directors. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you?
Yeah, sure. So, I actually sit on the board of directors for a couple different companies, and we are assembling one for us. And really, at the end of the day, we want sort of in the traditional sense, a board of directors is meant to hold the CEO accountable, right? Because the CEO is the boss of all bosses, but like, who's his boss? And the board of directors, they're really there to hold him accountable. They can vote him in or out. In a lot of cases, they serve more as advisory boards. So you have a really intelligent bunch of people in your industry, and other industries who just bring diverse perspective, who can, whether it's on a monthly or quarterly basis, come together, hear you talk through your challenges. You present the options and what you think the solutions are, and they can weigh in. And sometimes they'll dip into their Rolodex and help bring financial resources or human resources to the table to help move you forward. But I think it's a really important um, group to assemble. And I think the way that the average person who's just starting out in anything should think about it, it's really the same as an individual mentor. But eventually, when you scale into a real company, then maybe that becomes a broader group of people, which would be essentially referred to as a board of directors.
So even at the corporate level, at the company level, you are finding people who are strong in areas maybe that you're not to advise you.
That's right. Yep. It could be technology, right? Could we make investments in new tools or just modify some of the technology that we're using today to streamline our processes, be smarter, be more effective? So maybe we don't, you know, I don't want to say maybe we fire resources, but maybe we don't have to hire additional resources. We can be, more productive with the people that we have, right? So we can drive out costs and make our company more profitable. And that's just one example. Or is there a way we can leverage technology to make our investments more profitable? That's better for our investors. So yeah, it's bringing that diverse perspective to the table. People who have expertise in the things that I don't is pays big dividends.
It's kind of a tough time right now. Interest rates are high. I'm hearing from a lot of investors, my friends, others, that there's no deals out there. Is that true? Like, is real estate alive and kicking? Like, what are you up to right now?
So I'll tell you this. It's and I'm speaking about apartments specifically, multifamily apartments. That's what I do. It's what I specialize in. There has never been a greater time in American history to invest in apartments. It's one of the tougher times because, yes, it's true. There's a lot less inventory out there trading, as we say, or selling, because potential sellers know with the interest rate so high, a new buyer can't possibly offer them, the lofty price that they have in their heads, and so they're holding out. So there's much less, and when I say much less, I mean it's record low levels of inventory out there. So it is hard to buy, and so with all the competition that's out there, when there's something good that hits, it can get scooped up pretty quickly. But even single family flips, the same thing. And I guess it's same for flips in apartments on this point is that, you know, even though interest rates went up, demand remains so strong for real estate that it creates a buffer on the pricing side, right? So prices haven't really crashed. 2 years ago, there were a lot of doomsdayers out there on the internet. Oh, prices are going to crash and tumble. And I think at some point there will be a correction. I don't think there's going to be any kind of a crash, but I knew that was going to happen, right? That just fundamentally there are macro factors at play that just create a really strong buffer for pricing. And so what that does is it makes it really hard for deals to pencil out profitably. So yeah, you're making offers on properties that make sense for you as a flipper or a landlord, but they're 20 or 30% below asking price, and it's just really hard to get sellers to budge right now. So it's a tough environment. But if you buy right, it's an absolutely amazing time to buy real estate.
Here's the thing too. I think we're aware there's going to be a correction. I like that word much better than crash. And I know there's an actual economic definition to those, but we don't know when that's going to be. And so you can be, I know people that have been literally sitting on the sidelines wanting to buy real estate since 2017 because it was about to crash again like it did in 2009. Can you imagine, Kris, if they had bought maybe one in 2017, one in 2019, one in 2021, but they didn't because they were waiting for this crash. So this is the thing too. If you buy now, I mean, you could be to the point where it doesn't crash for another year or two. There's no correction for another year or two. And then boom, maybe you're back when you started, maybe not. Maybe it's 5, 10 years from now. And we talk about with stock investing all the time about dollar cost averaging and buying. You just keep buying. If you just keep buying, you're buying at a high price, you're buying at a medium price, you're buying at a low price. And it goes back up, medium, high, and you're buying an average price is such that you're doing great. And I think real estate can be that too, but you have to get started and buy the first one. And yes, I suppose you have to be mentally prepared that you put 10% down, there's a 10% correction, you lose that down payment right away. But that has not happened to anyone since 2009-ish, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing
So I
that
will,
hasn't happened.
yeah, I will say this. You don't make money, and this isn't my quote. I just have heard it and I use it all the time. You don't make money by timing the market, you make money by getting in the market, right? And the other thing about real estate is, so for people who are playing the short game, like if your intent is to get in at the absolute best time because you're trying to flip a property inside of 6 months to a year or two, then you need to buy with laser precision, and everything going on around you in the economy has to be perfectly right because these short-term flips, they tend to be, they have a much higher risk profile. But real estate is a long game. And if you're in it for the long game, if you're really trying to build long-term generational wealth, right? So if you're buying apartments, it could be 2 units, 5 units, 10 units, 100 units, whatever, the reality is even if the floor drops out from underneath you after you buy a couple of units, right? You've lost a bunch of equity. You don't lose your cash flow, right? You're still making cash flow. You've bought a business. The way to think about it is you've bought a business that produces cash flow. It has a record level of customer demand, aka tenants, who are going to be paying you on a month by month by month basis, right? And the funny thing about recessions is that they may impact margins on companies. Values of shares might essentially go down, right? But rents actually typically continue to go up. So your cash flow actually continues to increase. Now, and then don't forget, one, so you're still making money, cash is king. And two, if you're playing this 10, 20, 30-year game, real estate values always go up, right? And they go up significantly. So that equity drop, that'll always come back. And then there's usually followed by a little surge, right? And so you're gonna make it back and then some. So, if you're playing the long game, you're playing it right. Getting in now makes a ton of sense.
And you don't lose the knowledge that you've gained on those first couple deals. You probably don't lose the team that you've built, and you may lose some competition for future deals if
Yep,
all of
that's right.
that happened. So there can be a lot of good reasons to get in, and I just can't say enough about the cautionary tale about my friends that have been saying there's going to be a crash since 2017. And even if there's a crash, like a real crash next year, still not going to go back to 2017 prices. Like almost no matter what, they've missed it now. So also, when I heard you speak before, you talked about an obsession with building wealth, and that can sound a little negative. And I was wondering if you could talk about why that's not a negative thing to be obsessed with building wealth.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, just for me, the obsession really, I want to make sure I never have to worry about money. I want to make sure my family never has to worry about money, right? And so, um, and for me, building wealth means buying assets that produce cash, whether I choose to get out of bed and work in the morning or not. Assets that when there's periods of inflation, they actually do better as opposed to worse, right? When inflation hits, real estate values they soar, rents they soar. So my cash and my equity, I I my net worth went up considerably over the last 4 years, right? When a lot of people were feeling the pinch. And and when we take the cash distributions, when we collect the cash flow from the properties that I own, and my family does whatever the heck they want to do with it. We're not necessarily sort of chewing down a principal that we built up through, say stock investments, right? And so our, I could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in cash flow. My equity is always going to continue to go up, and that cash is going to be replaced tomorrow. So for me, I guess I just have a real obsession with that model because it's so easy that anybody can do it, and I want to get as much of it as possible. And I think it just positions you, like I said, to make a positive impact not only on yourself but your loved ones. And then I think about school and communities and all the different ways that I think schools are actually failing students. Now I'm in a way better position to influence and affect change than ever before. And so, that also feeds that obsession with building wealth because the more of it I get, the more I am in a position to really drive change. So for me, that's what it means personally.
Is there anything else you want to add, Kris, before we wrap up?
I think we did, I just kind of want to reinforce some of the points that you made because there might be some folks who are listening who maybe are at the lower end of the income stream. And I think to your point, as long as you're living within your means, you're investing intelligently. And even if you're a higher earner, I would really encourage you to explore private equity. I'm not saying you should say the heck with the stock market, it's volatile, right? I think the wealthiest people in the world, they have their assets diversified across both. So explore private equity. Feel free to reach out to us at Three Peaks Cap. Three Peaks Capital is the company. Our website's threepeakscap.com. Explore it, learn more about it. And diversify your portfolio. Put some of that money into real estate, and I think you'll be glad you did.
Do you want to tell people how they can find you online and follow you and get in touch with you other than
Yeah,
the website?
Yeah, well, so I'm a super big social media guy. I love to pump out content and I'm super responsive to people who have questions and need help because I love to help people. So, find me, Kris Moore, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn. I think you'd be really amazed at how quickly I respond. You can even email me at Kris@threepeakscap.com. That's Kris with a K. And I'm here to help. I'm a resource, no strings attached.
All right, we'll put some of that in the show notes as well. Guys, follow me on Twitter, X, at Adulting is Easy, Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real. If you like this episode, I think you'll also like episode 126, From Crying Over Debt to 1 Million Net Worth, and episode 138, Wake Up Call. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Kris and I have made adulting a little easier for you.